Hello, Brett here. Tim is traveling again this week, but happily we have a just-in-time new episode from Bio and Calamity for Discord Game Club. If that's not your thing, we should be back to finish off Splinter Cell Chaos Theory next week.
Welcome to TGC Just Rhetoric, a podcast where Nolan and myself interview interesting people. Today we are excited to have our first multi-guest pod and returning interviewee. Joining us is Michael Patton, who is principal of Omega Entertainment, now branded as OI Games, and a lead developer on Tower Song. He is back with us in a different capacity as a producer. Joining him from RealmSoft are developers Nathan Hemans and Ian. I am your host Ryan, or Biostats in the Discord, and I'll let these devs introduce themselves right now.
Hello, I am Nolan, or Calamity Nolan in the Discord.
Hello, I'm Michael Patton, or just Michael, and I'm a producer at OI Games and producer for Clockwork Ambrosia.
I'm Nathan Hemans. I'm the founder and creative director at RealmSoft.
And I'm Ian. I guess principal designer at RealmSoft. We're still figuring out titles, but
Yeah.
Mike, welcome back. How have you been? Can you give us a minute update on what you've been up to?
Well, mostly having twins. I had two girls in January at the 2 minutes apart, so that was wild. Has been wild. That feels like it's been dominated a lot of my life. But at OI we started working on another game after Tower Song, but we around the same time, actually I think even before Tower Song was out, we started working with RealmSoft. I think if you look on Steam, it'll say we're the publisher, but it feels more like a co-op almost. It's like a co-development thing, and people at OI have helped out with QA, art, production, so just trying to help the team wherever we can, because we all just, we feel like we're all on the same team building it together. And you guys can edit this out. I want to flip the script on you a little bit right at the top here and ask Ryan and Nolan why you guys, what's prompted you guys to want to do this interview?
It's a great question. We have been doing these for a couple of years now. Every couple of months they kind of come out in between other episodes. And so I think that one of the things that we really enjoyed was getting to know some people. And the ones we've done so far have been very much like intro level. And now we have an opportunity, especially since you have another project coming out that we want to help support, to get to know you a little bit more, right? And check in again and see what's going on in your life now. Build on what we've talked about before, and also, we can go a little bit more present. In our previous interview, we were talking a lot about like how you got to where you are, and now we can talk about where you're going next.
I think it's always fun to meet new people that do interesting things, right? That's just always throughout my life. That's been interesting. I also think it's cool that we are able to give you guys an opportunity to tell other people about what you do. And, you get to plug the games, which are also good.
Appreciate that.
RealmSoft, where'd the name come from? Also, started in 2011?
Yeah, well, the name, there's kind of a really long history. Back in the early forum days when I came up with usernames, it kind of stems sort of from that. Originally I had a username that was like RPG, and there's sometimes there's variants of that, and so there's so much. So one of the variants included the name Realm in it, And so Realmsoft kind of comes from that. An original idea for the company was a different name. That kind of has I don't know if I should bring it up, but like it was like Aero Games or something. But basically, when it came, I wanted to design the logo for the company. It kind of came up with a sort of stylized, maybe modern kind of fleur-de-lis design. And then when I saw that, it's like, oh well, this actually fits that realm name a bit better. This kind of feels like a crest, a symbol. So then we sort of came up with Realmsoft from that.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background? So you went to DigiPen. That's where you met Michael.
Yeah, right. So I went to DigiPen back in the early days when I was just a little tyke, young teenager. I also worked. There were various game making tools. There's the European software. There's like Click and Create, the Games Factory that I would work on when I was young. That was just hobbyist stuff, right? But I got my foot in the door and I realized that's what I wanted to do. So yeah, so I went to DigiPen. Graduated in 2008. It's been a long time, right? From sort of that track and that knowledge, obviously started working on the game engine that would ultimately become the engine for Clockwork Ambrosia. So it is a custom engine. It's kind of wild right now, but like the game has been in development for long enough in some capacity that back when we started, Unity wasn't really a thing, or it wasn't large at all. So, we kind of we're sort of in that realm of, well, what do we do? Let's make our own engine. That's kind of that. I don't know what other history, but yeah.
Ian, can you tell us about your background? And I think I saw that you did some level design on Tower Song.
Yeah, a little bit. I really of the people here, I'm really just kind of the imposter in the group. I did. I basically just been doing hobby game design stuff for all my internet life, starting out primarily with like old StarCraft maps and such. That's kind of where I was cutting my teeth, so to speak. Eventually started doing a lot of stuff on like RPG Maker 2000. Uh, started getting involved in those communities. Helped Mike make one of his first homemade RPGs back in the day, and kind of we've kind of kept up ever since. Doing little projects off and on, and collaborating, and that's I kind of credit Mike with he literally introduced me to Nate and got me on this project. So now, and I've been on this project so long that I guess it kind of counts as having a professional career.
Right. Yeah, of the three of us, I think Ian is the only one who's collected a paycheck for his game development work. So I don't know if he's the imposter, but sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about why you decided to all come together, and this is the time to release Clockwork Ambrosia?
I think it was around 2013 that I approached Nate and had been wanting to like get back into game design, which I hadn't done a lot of since I left DigiPen in like 2005. I changed tracks and kind of left it all on the wayside. But then actually found the love again through tabletop RPGs and as a GM. And I was like, which tickles the same part of your brain as game design. If anyone has ever done that, I think it's the same thing. Your engine is just D&D instead of Unity. But I just remember walking up to Nate one day and being like, hey, I think I want to make video games again. Like, you doing anything? He's like, oh yeah, I'm working on this shooter called Ambrosia, and he showed it to me, and I was like, what? Do you need help with anything? And he was like, yeah. So initially, I did a little bit of what Ian now does, basically until I found Ian. And Ian at the time, I think I think I was just working on it. Was that 2017, something like that? I might have some of the dates wrong because at the time it didn't seem it's like important, but I think I was just working on the game and I was like, hey, Ian, I think we could use some help because I think once the scale of what we were trying to do became clear that this is like a Metroidvania and it's huge, I'm like, I can't do all of it by myself. And in terms of like level design and enemy design, I was like, well, maybe Ian can come on and help with some of it. And then I think it just kind of spiraled from there. Like I introduced the two of them, and it all just went great. And I eventually got tied up with other things and walked away from the project, but Ian never did, and they just kept working at it. So
we're actually kind of fortunate at that point in time where Ian was in between jobs at the time, right? So like, hey, this might be a great opportunity. He's looking for a job. Like, we might have something to offer him. So yeah, it was really good timing there.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to accept a job at a Pizza Hut, and instead,
that's
I
right.
was like, yeah, I'll take some bucks for Nate, and then make a game instead. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Nathan, could you tell us in your words what Clockwork Ambrosia is and how you got everyone so excited about it?
Always kind of tricky. Really, it's so many things. Often when I approach a video game, I think about what do we want to do unique, or what do we want to bring to this space that is perhaps lacking. So with Clockwork Ambrosia, there's a few things for me, and then those things encapsulate pretty well Metroidvania, in my opinion. So the biggest thing that we like to discuss is the sort of weapon system. It sort of uses this rules setup where some interactions between the mod setups, which are basically just the way you build out the weapons. Now we have different categories, so sometimes those are more involved rules, and sometimes it's very straightforward, like you chain effects. So that's really a big thing. It's something that I wanted in a space of games for a long time, or really sort of evolved from an initial idea of inspirations way back in the day. There's like the shoot 'em up from Epic back when they were Epic Mega Games, I believe. They had this game Tyrion, which is kind of like an almost pseudo RPG shoot 'em up game. You can sort of like kind of customize your equipped shots and shields and stuff, and upgrade them and downgrade them. Combined with sort of other ideas of like Mega Man Legends had something kind of similar. We could customize things, but also I see it as an evolution of Super Metroid, where you had the ability to combine, you had different weapons you got in that game, but you could sort of stack them together, and they visually as well as mechanically combine their effects together. So that was kind of a neat thing. So I think back in the early days, I sort of thought, what could this be? And that's really the major inspiration for Clockwork Ambrosia for its weapon system. The other big thing for us is that we want a space or a world where like you constantly where you were very excited to seek treasure, find what's next, and in that sense, basically every treasure in our game is unique. We have tons of mods. I forget the current count. I think are we over 200 now? But with something like that, right? So like,
maybe.
yeah,
Close.
yeah, it's kind of crazy. We have some other things. We have equipment, but there's not quite as many of those. So we wanted a game of Metroidvania where you sort of had that aspect where everything was unique and everything sort of contributed to your overall. Though it wasn't an RPG in the sense of, oh well, if I find this, like, okay, well that was from like level 10, so to speak, but now I'm level 50. Like everything you get for particularly from the mod's perspective, the first thing you get in the game is useful at the end of the game with the right build setup.
Do you have an inspiration for the story part?
Well, I didn't really come up with it. Well, I kind of had a basic storyline that's based on back in the day of when I was a solo dev. It was just like, well, we need to kind of need a story that can support what we can do, and so that's kind of the genesis of back then. We sort of had like an abandoned island, and okay, well, why is there nobody here? And so we had some story mechanisms there. But I'm less of a story person, so Ian and Mike sort of try to hash out some of the details of some of those things and how they work.
Ian, Mike, where the inspiration come from?
This is probably, and like the DNA is like still there, but it probably would not. No one would like guess. I would think that. I think a big inspiration for for me when I was working with Nate on the story back in like 2014, 2015, whenever that was Bloodborne. And there is an idea in Bloodborne, not really the setting and like all that, but there's an idea in Bloodborne of like your so in Bloodborne you have this like civilization or the society that's been built upon like forbidden knowledge of like the old ones, and I don't remember what they call it, but it's very Lovecraftian, right? And I played that game back then, and it was just like so revolutionary. Like I'd never played anything like that before that told its story that way before, and I would argue that like Souls likes are just modern day Metroid, like they're 3D Metroidvanias. They have very similar level structure, especially Bloodborne and like Dark Souls.
I found a way to reference Dark Souls, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it had every episode got to find a way.
So it just kind of fit, and I found a lot of inspiration from there. I don't think I sat down and was like, okay, I'm going to do this story, but in this like cute island like setting that we've come up with. But I know that was a very like that was in my brain a lot when we were working at the time. But I other than coming up with some basic concepts, I think there's some historical context that I can give to some of these things, but like so much of what the game is today, if you play the game today and that story, like that is out of Ian's brain. That is Ian's baby. So I have to, toss the rest of that question to him.
Oh, like right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to think of how to talk about it. By the way, this is the first podcast I've ever been on, so
Pressure's on.
Pardon me. I don't know. I mean, I really did my path to working on this game really was just this kind of slow buildup of just kind of doing more and more on the project. So I wasn't originally in as a story designer, but as Michael originally stepped away, I started, I took what he had and started building on top of it. So that kind of Lovecraftian element is absolutely still at the heart of it. And then, I do as I tend to do and layer a lot of pastiche and silly things on top of it. I don't tend to write things quite as grim, I guess. So I still like the kind of the kind of ponderous darkness at the heart of it.
So it's kind of like the danger of knowledge, and so machines play a big role in the game, both as enemies in the game, but also from a part of the storyline. And sort of that. So we sort of built up this the sort of came together, built up this story together over time. And so some of the details, again, a lot of it is sort of just the player over time. When they first start up, they don't really sort of know these things. So to speak on some of those themes, don't know how much detail I should really get into that players playing the game.
So we'll do a postmortem talk on the hidden Lovecraftian themes in Clockwork Ambrosia. Or maybe somebody will do an analysis video. It's like, a game theory about what's really going on. But I do remember an early conversation I had with Nate where I wanted to take the story much darker, and I think Axiom Verge had like just come out at this point, and he's like, no, I don't want something like that. And I think that was a good call, because I think now that genre has become very dark, very Lovecraftian, very like, and like I think the biggest things in it are sometimes gross or horrific, like Axiom Verge, and that kind of Castlevania bent. And I think Clockwork Ambrosia is a little bit unique because it's a much more cheerful, like upbeat, colorful, bright. You spend a lot of time outdoors, like in the sun. So it's and I think Ian brings a lot of that. What's the word?
Can't speak of it.
Yeah, I can't think of the word either. But he brings a lightness to it, and that humor, which can undercut the drama in a way that makes it pleasant to work through instead of horrific, or there might be dark themes at the root of the game, but nobody's walking away from Ambrosia feeling miserable about it. Like you might have Dark Souls. You're just like, oh, this is awful. Everything here is terrible. All of my options are bad. Like, no, that's not what Ambrosia's about.
I like making a story where you get to meet friends.
Yeah. There's definitely that element too. Like the little creatures you can find underground. So yeah, I think there's this mix. So there's definitely dark themes that might surprise players, especially as Mike was talking about in this sort of very colorful setting. So we sort of coat that with other layers. So it's a multi-layered, multi-tiered, but yeah,
Bosses feel pretty from Softy.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, so then some of the biggest challenge in the game for players are going to be the bosses, are the bosses. So
Owie.
what was that? Yeah, you spend a lot of time working on the design of the bosses, and that a lot of people struggle, especially if you talk about the early parts of the game, the mines, which is basically the end of the demo of the game, since you're that's a sort of element of the part of the game where you kind of have to it's like a gate or a block, you have to defeat that enemy to really progress in the game. There's other parts of the game that's a bit more open, but that can really be a sort of a stumbling block for players. Now we have an easy out that's kind pseudo hidden for that battle. So like if a player is having trouble and they need to look it up, they're at that point in time, it'll probably be, oh, you can just do this. There's an easy way if you kind of know the sort of secret. But like people who don't do that or people who want that challenge, they really sort of feel like that's the first time the game really starts to feel challenging. Now we don't want to go really hard we don't want to be oppressive with the challenge, but we certainly want to have a level where experienced players, sweat a little bit.
I do like that because there's so much modularity in this game. If you struggle with a boss, right, you can go back and change your loadout to be really completely different. Some of these mods for the weapons are will change up the way it plays quite a bit. And then also, you could go off and find other mods or find upgrades or things that'll make it
Yeah.
a little bit easier. So I like how open that is and how many options you give the player.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for pretty much any boss in the game, with that one sort of exception, now there are things to find in that area of the mines that will help you with the boss. But yeah, so that is another core tenet of the game. If you're having difficulty, try a new build, or you can go explore, find new things. So while there is that challenge in the game for players, we have lots of those mechanisms sort of ease that, and we sort of built that intentionally, right? Where it's a game design where like you could beat it with no mods at all, like you really want a challenge. But it's a game design where if you built it correctly, all bosses should be overcomable.
Or if you're really good at building mods, they can all be defeated super handily.
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
There might be some really broken ones we're working through right now. But
Yeah, Lake sort of go wild. We left some of the really powerful mods in the game, and some players have found our playtests have found we have to break that. So like we're kind of rushing to balance some of those late game things. We'll sort of see how that goes. But like as of right now, it's so late in the game. There's really only one optional boss remaining at that point of the game in the final boss. So it's not terrible if those broken builds are in the final game, but like we would prefer some balance. So that even if you have a good build, you don't just completely melt a boss. They still take a little bit of time to defeat. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the sort of the runaway and degenerate builds that are like, okay, well, with this one weapon, with this one build, you deal 4 times the amount of damage as any other weapon. But like, well, we like we like the idea of a powerful build, but like we want them to all sort of have a relative power level against each other. We don't want players to feel like they are hurting themselves by sticking to the weapon they like. As opposed to finding a way to build any weapon that's very powerful and unique for them.
Reminds me of when I was a GM and you'd have the power gamers who would like build out this like broken fighter who could do, like 100 damage in one hit, and then everybody else is like doing 20 maybe sometimes and then missing a lot more. And then you're like, as a GM, you're like, so do I give the bosses a lot more health and screw everybody but the fighter, or what do I do there? And but we have somebody in the playtest right now who's trying to play through the game with just base equipment, and I think they've made it up to They're in the later stages of the game. I think they have maybe 4 bosses left, and it's not easy, but they're doing it.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking of an addendum to what Nate was saying, which was basically that, like for all the work we're going to do on balancing the sheer number of mods in the game, there are going to be combinations that we don't account for, and I think
Right.
that's the beautiful thing about the game system, and why it's our job to make sure that the things aren't really broken so that people can really get one over on us and break the game anyway.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of we want every combination and build to be to provide something if possible. So we actually have a lot of sort of secret interactions in the game. We're like, well, just read the rules. These things wouldn't really work together, be effective together. But we sort of add no ties. Well, there's this idea with these two mods that is pretty close to that idea that can sort of work together. So a lot of almost hidden things for players to sort of find that they put things together. So that's kind of the other side of that coin of players finding things unexpected. But we have things unexpected for players as well, for them to sort of discover. Because like we really sort of want that aspect of like if, these two things like 2 months together should probably do something, right? So yeah.
Tell us about making the game. What is your favorite part to work on, or what do you enjoy most?
That what's actually interesting is I was just at GDC this year. I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship or a free pass, whatever you sort of want to call it. Just sort of attended there and sort of as a part of that, one thing that I kind of realized that a lot of the work that I do and enjoy and just will like just do for fun on my own sort of falls in line with that sort of technical artist side of things. So like shaders and this and special effects and things of that nature. We have a weapon that is going to be post-release content that has some sort of visually required a bit of work because the way it sort of like moves around and stuff. It's kind of this laser effect. And so I put that in the game and spent some time on that here and there, sort of to get the visuals of that looking good and professional. And so things like that. The other thing we have is water in the game. For a long time, the water was a temporary placeholder and didn't really look the greatest, but we finally sort of cracked the code, so to speak, on that, and water in the game now looks really well. And sort of it's a 2D game, but it sort of feels can feel kind of 3D because it actually wraps around the terrain and things of that nature. So for me, I think I enjoyed those things quite a bit. I'll try to throw those in the game. And of course, working on mods can be very fun for me too. That sort of mechanical design space is what I really enjoy from a design perspective in games. So those are the things that I just sort of like coming up with something new or a new interaction for an existing weapon or mods, and then sort of doing this technical art stuff in the game.
I'm taking notes of my most recent playthrough, and one of them was that the water looks incredible.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yeah.
I think you did the like pixelated style with water really well. I was looking at it for a while to figure out what exactly was going on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of since it built up over time, I had a couple of different working water effects, and then it sort of all came together at the end. I think really there was when holding up is for a long time we're trying to get reflections to work, but because of this perspective of the game, like reflections just they don't really work because like it's a fake perspective and trying to reflect off of it, you get weird things. And so once I abandoned that and I'm like, okay, well, what if we just work on like the refraction of the water and things of that nature? And it sort of came together at that point. So I'm glad you appreciate that because yeah, I'm kind of proud of especially how long you had different ideas working, how that really came together.
Ian, how about you? What's your favorite stuff to work on?
Boy, probably. I mean, probably like I think my happy place is in just building levels. Especially especially when I can get to this stage where I'm just decorating them and putting the fun little art bits and then all over. That's definitely something that I could do all day, all night without complaint. my only complaint being that I have too many other things to do, and I I don't have enough time to decorate. Um, just want I guess I just want every game I play to be a little cozy sim. I don't know. Every game I make.
So when you're
Um,
designing a level, do you start with like a loadout in your head of what you think the level should look like first, or do you start placing objects to see what interactions are? What's your sort of process?
I'd say it really depends on you know on what I'm making. Because and especially for a Metroidvania, sometimes you are making stages, to that link a bunch of other concepts together. Therefore, you know, that stage already has a purpose to be there by the time you make it, and then it's just about kind of filling it in and making it flow well. Um, Usually, it is just I'm starting with the basic, large blocks, simple platforming. Like the first pass of every area is more or less like this is a hallway, this is a vertical shaft, and here's a couple of platforms to jump on. And then over time that gets worked into like, all right, now this has an interesting feature in it. This has a little elevator in it. Now this has annoying bats in it.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned it, but like Ian, really sort of, what's the, in-game, like reason for this, or sort of that detail. So yeah, I think he really enjoys that, and I'm sort of speaking for him on that, but I've noticed that that'll sort of like, okay, well, this room represents this, and this is, this is like the miners like hang out or whatever it is. So yeah.
I was just going to kind of ask you to like something that blows my mind with the amount of levels you've had to create for Clockwork Ambrosia, and then the fact that they all have to, like, some of them you encounter 3 different times on 3 different parts of the power curve with like very different objectives, and just like I feel like of all the games you can make levels for, Metroidvania has to be one of the more complicated. So I don't know if you've been driven mad by trying to piece all that together, or if you found a secret to that to making all that work.
I mean, that's why I answered that I like doing it, because like it doesn't actually drive me mad. That is the kind of thing I could just do forever. It is like, anytime, even though it has cost us time, and that's not good, anytime we've had to like cut an area or shift something around, now I have a big puzzle on my hand for like making the rest of the world link back up.
Yeah, I think
And I love that. I love
he
it's like
loves
you
it. Yeah.
do I get to
I will say we inadvertently gave ourselves a design challenge in that round with one of the things we don't. It's a secret, kind of a secret to the players when they figure out. But people, maybe Nolan is sort of aware of this. Like our game world, our world map is kind of unique. It functions, it works, it operates a bit differently than in other games, and so that gives us that design challenge of when we need to move stuff around. It's more difficult than a typical Metroid. So we're probably gonna do this again in a future game, but like for this time, it's a very unique spin on world design for us.
That's right. We won't spoil it, but it's a very cool moment when you realize what's going on.
Right, yeah.
I will say, overall, I think the art is incredible, and I love the way it looks visually. It's got sort of a Super Metroid and a little bit of Mega Man X, and but like friendlier is how I would describe it. But I'm not really an artist guy.
Yeah, it makes sense. Kind of basically what we were going for. I wanted something, that wasn't too dark, so we wanted something kind of cheerful, but not completely cartoony either. So I think that's about right. So it's right that makes it like something kind of like pseudo realism, but it's not really. But it's just because it's not, it's not like a black line drawn cartoon. It's a little bit more of, okay, well, there's actual shades here, and you could sort of see an element. But a big thing for me has always been metal, and that's a big thing. Our artists, will definitely, for metal is often a bit more flat. So someone's like, hey, let's make this shinier. And so especially the treasure chest, and like let's shine that up. So like the treasure chest up, kind of let's shine. That's one because I basically like push really hard, like, hey, let's make that look really metally. So you kind of have some aspects of that. It is very bright and colorful, cartoony, but like we like to. The sort of design direction is just as a sort of personal preference, but I think my history of play games like Mega Man. We didn't bring that up earlier, but from a moment-to-moment gameplay perspective, Mega Man and Mega Man X were huge inspirations for the game. And originally, I actually built a prototype, a reverse engineered of the PS1 Mega Man X game engine, just to sort of learn from that. How does I like the way this game feels how was that built? And so I literally sort of just broke it down frame by frame and got like the exact one-to-one match of that. And we sort of built Ambrosia basically on top of that, modified, basically everything. But like a lot of players will still say, it feels like a Mega Man game. It feels like Mega Man X. And they're like, yep, I see why, because we literally sort of built the game, the gameplay on top of that.
Just to drive the point home of like trying to make this game upbeat, just kind of a fun anecdote. We recently, our beta play testers will have noticed that if you were swimming and then you die, it just kind of like plays no animation, and so if by the time the game comes out, this will be implemented in the game, but there's actually going to be an animation where she dies like in the water, and just like. And we still try to come up with like the like most like low impact but still making sense for a character that's swimming, like death animation that we could, but we wanted to keep it as like nice as possible, and still like the resulting animation, like everyone in the team was just like, oh, this is horrible, this is so disturbing, this is so, and it's really not like, it's not like she's like it like it's like Sonic 2 level of like drowning in the water kind of thing. But I think just that want to keeping things upbeat and light. And I think even like the final boss of the game, which is maybe the darkest it gets, like there's still I think Ian worked very closely with Maciej Kaczynski, who really, this is my original project with him, but he did do a little side to work on with me on Tower Song. But those two worked so closely to just inject so much character into every frame of animation for every enemy. And I think it really creates a unique visual identity for the game. Things are often cute and funny even when they're blowing up, without being cartoonish and like silly. Everything's still very grounded, so it works really well.
Maciej is a delight to work with. Very one of the many pleasures of this project is being able to just kind of come up with things and say, hey, Maciej, can you draw this? And then he just does.
Yeah, actually, he's really good. He's the pixel artist, right? But he really functions quite well as a concept artist as well. We're sort of say, hey, we have kind of this idea for something. Can you mock up something? And he'll come up with just something very unique and original, or even see, hey, here's a reference piece of art. Make us something kind of like that. And he's very good at like making a variant of it that is clearly its own original thing. But like you can see that like this was like the original like request, right? But like of course you can't just copy that. So he's really good at having that sort of aspect, which that's a boon for a small team like us to have a multi-factored artist like that. And he also of course does the animation. He came in, his strong suit wasn't animation, but like he has all these other facets, there's other strengths that really really is advantageous for us.
Yeah, concepting monsters, animating the monsters, he's done quite a lot of the environment design as well, and a lot of the really snappy UI elements. There's like anything we've asked him to do, he's done such a good job at. It's like I don't think there's a thing this guy can't do well.
Yeah, just to give him full credit, he has I think almost every piece of art in the game, outside of like the key art, he either did or had a hand in drawing. So, which is also pretty astonishing when we're talking about how much content has gone in the game. I was talking to him recently because he's also been drawing for this game since 2014.
Yeah, Ian likes to say he was actually the first like developer on the game outside of myself, because Because yeah, when Ian came on, like we already had Machi working on the art.
I say two other things I really enjoyed. The music is phenomenal. It's like
Johnny.
a quick one.
Johnny's music.
And then I really enjoyed how she handles and controls, and the jump feels good. And I enjoyed the platforming. So I don't know who was in charge of that part, but it's good.
Yeah, so again, I sort of built that sort of base on top of Mega Man. Mega Man X was sort of the original start, the original gameplay framework, moment to moment framework. We certainly built on top of that because we have a lot of things that you don't have in those games. I think the wall jump was a tricky one because our version of it is not the same as in Mega Man X, and so it was sort of tricky to get a one that works well. And even for players coming into it who are used to this, it's actually in some ways it's easier for new players, surprisingly, for the wall jump because players have this expectation of games like Mega Man X or even now Hollow Knight of, oh, let's have to hold the wall to jump. So like experienced players have a little bit more trouble sometimes working with the wall jump because they don't realize that, oh, it's actually it's similar to do, you don't have to hold against the wall. But players who do sort of figure that out, they say it feels quite well, right? Because of the way we have the canceling built into that and things of that nature. So of all the movement mechanics, I probably spent the most amount of time trying to get that one to work well, and we sort of wound up with the one we have now. What wound up being the best is that you do not have to hold against the wall, like I said. But like for a long time we didn't have that because there was this almost expectation now of, oh, with the wall jump you got to hold against the wall. But like this is a different one, which is a little bit more of early game sort of exploration focus without, you can't just scale up a wall yet. So what can we do that's sort of in between scaling up a wall, but you can get a little bit of extra momentum. So yeah, I work on a lot of that. So I don't want to toot my horn too much because like a lot of it really comes from just analyzing other games and effects, and just that's actually for me that can be one of the hardest parts of development because like when a game works well, like it's invisible to the player. So then as a designer, you have to try to surface mentally a layer of things like, okay, well, how did this actually work in a game? And I have to recall that or just start to jump into a game and break down. Oh, like how does this work? Like what feels well? Like what is sort of coming together for all this? And that's a tricky thing because, unlike a rule system, where you can just literally see this is what this and this thing, you can analyze that and like understand that. Like, these little hidden game mechanics work with 60 frames per second, trying to break that down, it can be very, very, very difficult. But I think we did a good job of sort of replicating the sort of good gameplay feel.
How do you guys come up with the idea for the guns and the mod?
There's actually a bit of a history there. In the earliest version of the weapons were sort of element based or like elements as inspiration. So like for each element, including some things like metal, say kind of like Chinese elements or something, we had a weapon, so like a fire weapon, an ice weapon, things like that. And so those are kind of the original inspirations for the weapons, and we sort of built out some stuff for that in the early prototypes. But as the game sort of evolved, we started to move towards weapons that had a bit more specificity to them, or weapons that were thematically more either solid or just had conceptual actual weight behind them. So like now like a missile launcher, right? That's an actual physical thing. It's not just like, oh, there's an element like the ice, the fire weapon. Really, it's a result of, as we sort of built out the mod system to the way that it is today, it sort of started to make more sense to have the weapons like they are now. But I think, once we sort of landed on the theme of like steampunk, we started thinking about, oh, what kind of makes sense for this? But we also sort of have these sort of like sci-fi elements. That's where the pulse breaker comes in, right? Kind of surprised. It's kind of is more of a Mega Man weapon, right? But we have that sort of element in the game, the sort of mishmash of these different kind of ideas of the game's thematic ideas in the game. So a lot of it sort of comes out from those perspectives, but I think it also comes out of like what's a unique feel for a weapon. It doesn't really exist in the game either. Like from a gameplay perspective, so like the revolver is a good example of, hey, like what if you had a fast firing weapon? So that's kind of where the revolvers come into play. Sort of dual wield them. It's all about firing lots of bullets. You deal less damage in a single shot, but your actual DPS can, depending on the build, be potentially even stronger than others. It's kind of fun. You have a playtester commenting about the revolver, right? They're like, we have builds for the revolver that make it a little bit slower and stronger, and that playtest is really about. It's like I like to do that, but I'm like, well, yeah, you have tons of options for DPS. But you kind of like to see that, like, because these other players are just like live and breathe the fast firing weapons. So a lot of times it's that, and some of our post content weapons that will come out at some point post release, maybe be DLCs kind of really talk about that type of thing, right? An expansion, but we have some of the weapons and it usually boils down to like what is an aspect like some of them actually those weapons were actually in the game earlier as their own weapons, but they didn't feel unique enough. So we sort of retooled them as ideas like, well, what can we do here to sort of change them? So really that's what we talk about, like from an ideas perspective. I think a lot of it really ultimately does come down to like we just want something that's unique and fun to play, and what does that look like? So yeah.
I should say, who do we credit or blame for the enemy and boss designs? Because there is one boss, I don't want to spoil too much, a B style boss that I struggled so badly on.
Yeah, that's all me. I'm basically everything annoying in the game. You can probably blame on me.
I have a very specific game design question, because recently in the Discord we've been talking about save files and how saves work and what you should choose to save. Do you have a philosophy behind that? How did you choose the way that the saving system works in Clockwork Ambrosia?
That is actually a very interesting topic because the game itself is so old that we started out with a very traditional type of system, or maybe an RPG type of system where you basically, as you saved, you just sort of selected the save slot. So you could sort of create different saves along the way. But in the year since that we implemented that concept, like game design has shifted a bit more toward this idea of, oh, you choose a save file. And then the game like auto save sort of work within that single save file. Now, there are also games, again, particularly RPGs that will allow you to have multiple save slots, but we're sort of thinking about that, like, oh, well, most players are probably going to prefer this, but they don't have to constantly select a slot. So that's kind of what we wound up switching to. But there are pros and cons to each. Now, we do allow players to copy a save if they go back to that menu. But for us, that's, there's lots of, we also have this autosave system, which it's actually kind of an interesting story there, where it sort of started out as a way for us as developers to sort of have, a little bit of lenience. You don't have to go all the way back to an old save because, games these days do have like pure autosave, right? There's no like save point, so to speak. There is, but like you die, the game effectively saves, and you go back to where you were. Our game as a design concept, we actually discussed that. Mike was actually there talking about like Bloodborne, like, oh, let's do that. And I was thinking about like the design implications of that. Like, that means that we have to design the game in a way that like we can't trap the player, or they can't sort of get stuck in something. So we actually shifted away from that conceptually, and now like 10 years later, like all games do this. We're like trying to like, okay, what can we do? And so I think our sort of autosave system is kind of an in between that we have. Like, okay, well, we built the game with the knowledge that we don't have autosave. Like we intentionally did that, but now it's almost expected. So what do we do? So we sort of have this sort of in between, like, okay, well, if you die, you go back to the room, you have a couple of chances to try again before we sort of boot you back to an old save. So that sort of came about as sort of, these ideas over time. Yes, Mike.
There's a subtle genius there, because if the game had come out when we originally wanted it to come out, which is around probably 2017, we would have, with this like the respawn like Souls-like save system, we would have been a market leader. But Nate knew, no, this will come out in 2026 when everybody will be doing it, and we'll be actually innovative in the space. So he was good foresight there.
Actually, interesting to see the more punitive retro style saving system where all of your progress is lost when you die up to the last point you saved at.
Yeah, it is very different. Like I said, when we started, it wasn't that new and novel of a thing, but like it is an idea that we kept, as we were developing it. But there is that level that we realized that as make the game harder. Like it can be kind of punishing. So we sort of have that in between. One thing though that is on my radar to fix, and this is kind of a thing, is that when you get that reset, one thing that can be jarring for players is that like if you had a weapon set up that you set up while you're in that room and respawn, that weapon setup will be reset, and that can be it's kind of confusing. So I don't think we have a fix for that in yet, but I think we do actually want to move towards like if what you equipped is still possible because a player could have picked up a treasure chest, and then if they did a customization there, well, that's not viable if you restart on that room. But anything else, like I want to do a thing where we check to see what did you have before you dodged? Is that still a viable mod setup? And to apply that, or at least have a config option for players. So kind of little thing, but yeah, but that's sort of because there is these expectations these days, and your project continues, and so there's just lots of things for if this was released 10 years ago, 20 years ago, like there would be no expectation for players that they'd have to have this built understanding that everything is getting reset on them. But like we're as game design is being modernized, like players have different expectations, but also a lot of it is quality of life, right? So we sort of want to keep that as well. So just FYI, it's on our radar to allow you to keep your your weapon builds when you die.
Well, you also have your retry system, which feels like a nice concession to some of that, where
yes, right, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Three retries in the same room.
Yeah, unless it's already been addressed, which is possible. I can't remember everything I've done, but the retry system will undo any change that you've done to your weapon since you entered the room, and that's kind of what I'm talking about, especially in bosses, because you might do your boss, you die, you try to want to do a new build and fight the boss, but then you die again, you'll go back to the previous build, the first build you had, and that's can be a thing for players that's kind of unintentional. We didn't intentionally design the game that way. It just comes about because we're reloading an old save.
I think that there's been a nice balance on the game development, I think, between Ian and Nate. And where I think like you have two GMs, and I think if you left it entirely to Nate, the game would be a lot easier. If you let it entirely to Ian, it would be a lot harder. And I think they come together and have game design fights, right? And the end result is, I think, something that is a better answer than a game that's just really overly punishing and exacting, or a game that's just like meaningless, where the mod power doesn't matter and your mods don't matter because the game's just like too easy, which is grossly oversimplifying their positions. But there is a dialogue there that has happened between those two, and I think it brings a nice balance in the end to the game, where you get to have really difficult and interesting mechanics in like boss fights and things, but then there is still a nod to trying to give the player a, like you were talking about earlier, Nolan, where hey, just go explore, and maybe you'll find something that'll help you, or you can if you almost had it, just retry. Maybe you'll get it this next time. And I think that's really nice.
Yeah. There's kind of this tug and pull between Ian and I and myself to some extent. I like to say that our target difficulty is closer to Hollow Knight 1 than Hollow Knight 2. That Silksong is pretty difficult even for me. Like usually when I play it, I have to play it like an hour at a time because it's so difficult. I have to go at it. So our target is certainly going to be more Hollow Knight 1, where we actually where the game finally lands because of the mod system can be a little bit more up in the air, because if players build right, it should be easier. But if players don't build the most optimal build, but a sort of like what we'll call like a midline build, then it's going to certainly be closer to Hollow Knight.
Are you going to add in any mods that make it explicitly more difficult for players who want that extra challenge?
Well, I think that we sort of say that like no mods is a difficulty broader, right? Like trying to go even harder than no mods would be very difficult. Now, but you do bring up an idea of like, what about like a difficulty for the game where I do have a full build, but I want it harder? And I think that's a concept that we're certainly amenable to. We don't, for the first release, the initial release of the game, where we just sort of have this sort of baseline difficulty. But I think there is certainly room to add in either difficulty modes or sort of options to make the game harder or easier by items like you're talking about.
And kind of we are going for that type of design where players can hopefully lead themselves to the type of experience they want. And thankfully, I've seen that to be at least a little true with playtests so far, where the types of players that really want to just min max and obliterate everything have been able to do so, and the ones that want a challenge have, it's like, all right, well, I'll just tie my hand behind my back a little bit, and have my fun that way too. I think there is like something to be said. Like this is like a lot of I feel like a lot of the like mass appeal of like Nintendo games ends up working like this, where they end up being games that almost anyone can play and beat, but then are inherently fun to play, and that leads people to going back again and again and trying to play them different ways and finding, you know, new ways within the game's, built-in system to essentially create their own modes. And I kind of hope that Ambrosia ends up finding that kind of life, because I think that would be very fun.
And I ask Ryan and Nolan if you guys have like a secret favorite mod that you feel like is, the game changer that, everyone should know about, or maybe don't know about. It's your little secret.
I don't want to like spoil it, but there is a way to combine a rocket launcher with a multi-directional attack that I enjoyed the hell out of.
I like a chaos build, so I'm more of the I like the sharpshooter that has the random angle. Get a lot of bullets going in a lot of different directions that are ricocheting everywhere. That's the way I like to play.
There's a fun element to me that I think was sort of a surprise to me. And then as a quick aside, I feel it's almost wrong. But from a marketing perspective, I try not to call the game a Metroidvania sometimes, because that's it's such like a dirty term now because there's so many, but the Vania part of it isn't really true. It's more of Super Metroid and maybe Mega Man X combined. But there is an element of role playing that I have seen with players with their weapons and their builds, and you can kind of commit to whatever your play style is, like a class, and you try to make it work. And then for you, the mods you find as that kind of in that role are like, how do I make this vision I have for gameplay? Like, how do I make that better, rather than like, what's the next broken build I can make? Although some players do that too. But then, like my fighter example in D&D, some players just want to break the game, and that is their role play.
I was going to say, that kind of reminds me, speaking of D&D, that kind of reminds me of when I forget the name of it. I want to say Ironclad, but I don't think that's right. When it was first introduced in D&D 5, 4 or something. The whatever this was, I forget the name of it, but it was basically like this machine golem creature. And I think it was Forgotten Realms type of creature. But like in the early days, like you could strap a two-handed weapon to mechanically strap it to his hand, so you could basically, either wield with one hand or dual wield, like two-handed weapons. And they removed that from final release, but the DM allowed, well, it's in here. It's in, like, if you play with, like, when it was first introduced, this is a thing, and he allowed me to do it. And that's very busted when you did dual wield. It's kind of crazy in the range you can get, things like that. It's just, yeah. So speaking of fun, we're like, yep, so I was able to do it.
Nice. Yeah, I will say, I think the correct way to play is that whenever you pick up a mod, you have to put it on and try it out. But I guess if other people would like to stick with one weapon, that's what they can do.
Boring.
The Pokemon rules, like, when you have to catch the first Pokemon you find in the area that's in your party. What was that mode called?
Nuzlocke.
Yeah, there's the Nuzlocke Ambrosia run. Yeah.
I like that playstyle as well. When I play Diablo 3, they always speed up, like, they sped it up over time, so it always gets shorter windows. But especially if you talk about early versions, and you can still do it, but when you level up, you unlock something, you have to play with it. And I had in turn where you have to play with it for at least half a level. So like, and that used to be back in the day, there's maybe like 30 minutes or something, and I just keep sort of shrinking. But yeah, it's very fun to sort of do that. And so I kind of agree to a certain extent. Like, it can be very fun. Like when you find a bond, like, okay, let's try it out. Let's put on a weapon to play with it. We don't have that same idea of like levels, but it could be, for a certain period of time, like a certain number of minutes, we're talking about the next mod, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm very much of the boss lab style of of game player. So if I'm not making significant progress against a boss in 3 attempts, and I have to go back to the lab and figure out, all right, what do I have? Let's switch it up. Let's figure out some new synergies and see if that'll give me a better shot. How's it feel now that this game is almost out?
Relief combined with anxiety, because you think about like all the things that like you still want to get in the game as big as it may be, there's still things you want to get in or just cut content, right? So you intentionally cut stuff, or even just things that you sort of know they were sort of like, oh, like I wish I could spend a little bit more time on the mod distribution. Like it's not perfect, and like I think you probably communicate like I'm constantly like I think if we switch this and this, I think it would be slightly better progression for players because like you think about these combinations, like oh man, it just flows so much nicer. But then I'll come back a month later, like oh that build now this other combination, it means that oh that doesn't flow as well. So then if we move that around and like you can kind of the reality of when you build something as a puzzle box like that, there is no perfect distribution is sort of the reality because like for anything you build, like oh like if the player is doing this build, this is the perfect progression on that build. Talk about a different build is that you sort of the inverse, right? You can't have things perfect, in that way. So like, but that's always a thing for me. I'm sure that always have I was thinking in my head about a definitive version. That's like okay, this is the perfect, this is the perfect layout. Like the player gets things in just this right order, but like I don't know the reality is like that's not possible. You can never, there's no such thing, but like I think in my head always be like oh like what is there a way to improve this, make this even better and even nicer. So yeah, this is kind of the various feel. I think when we actually release, I think there'll be a certain level of relief and excitement. In these sort of weeks leading up, there's a lot of actually, to be honest with you, I have less anxiety now. We sort of, the game is content complete in the respect that we have everything in there. So right now it's just focusing on balance, bug fixes, and things of that nature. So, but there is still that anxiety of like, what are players gonna find? And is there just this huge bug in the game and it's unplayable mess, and we're gonna be review bombed because of something we just didn't see, or we sort of shipped it, a patch before the game came out because we found a bug this morning. It's pretty big. We need to fix it. But now it's like, well, what if that introduces another bug and on release there's something terrible. But I think for the most part, it's what we might call like baited excitement yeah.
Michael, did your release of Tower Song help inform these guys on how they should roll it out on Steam?
You'd have to ask them if they feel like they've been guided at all. It definitely informed how I approached the cadence and the timing and what to structure. I definitely wish I had a person doing my job for me when I was making Tower Song, so that somebody else worrying about those logistics, so I could just worry about making the game. I learned a lot putting Tower Song out on Steam, and I have applied a lot of those lessons to Ambrosia, and I think we're already seeing some of the dividends of that pay off. Ambrosia is also a much different scale of game, and a full regression test of Tower Song. We eventually got to the point where we could play the whole game through from start to finish in like 2 hours or something to make sure nothing was broken. That's not possible in Ambrosia. So it's also a new problem to solve in its own way.
I just wanted to thank you and confirm that I am glad that someone is doing your job, and that is you.
Yeah, I was trying to do project management on our own for a while there. It was kind of very, very touch and go. So Mike is a much appreciated asset in that regard.
A lot of that stuff just wasn't getting done when it was having to be, split between Nate and me.
Yeah.
Marketing outreach of any kind. In addition to the fact that reaching out and talking to people is just pretty much anathema to who I am. I just didn't have the time for it. So having Mike and the rest of OI in here to help us actually be visible at all has been very, very helpful and very appreciated. And I haven't had to learn nearly as much about the Steam backend as I would have had to otherwise. Thanks, Mike.
Nate, what would you consider a success here?
For the game, I honestly, I've considered just the game releasing a success. Now, obviously, we want the game to be profitable enough that we can make the next game because like everything goes well. We have many games in our plate, to teed up to do, but like that depends on how well the game does. So like but just releasing a game is a success in my opinion. And before Clockwork Ambrosia had any real level of traction, for me it was, well, we have a game out there. Some people know about it. It's not going to necessarily sell well at all, but like every game you release, increases your clout and there'll be some return customers for your next game. So for a long time, it was just make the game, put it out there. Some people know about it, has been a success for me. We do have internal metrics for like, based upon how well the game does, what our next project will be, and what we work on next. There are some determinations there. So like there are internal, things of that nature, but like I don't, really tend to focus on that too much. For me, just making a game, if it's successful and if it's enjoyable, a fun game and a game that like the things that we want players to receive well, are they being received well? The monster, the weapon system, is that something that players are, they're theory crafting things and things like nature, and they're looking at it like, oh, this is so cool. Like I've always wanted a game like that, or like, oh, I never sort of imagined, this before. This is really cool. Those sort of aspects to us, those are successes, right? I think honestly, at the end of the day, if you can remove financials from the aspect, because like, they're just something you have to work with. To me, success is like, did we deliver, something to players that they didn't have before, and did we do a good job of that? Is it fun? Is it fun?
Ian, how about for you? What would be success?
I mean, pretty much that same answer. It is very, for me, it is very much one thing at a time, and the thing right now is getting this game out the door and making it as good as possible. I think there's a lot of love and a lot of very good art has gone into this game. Not just from Nate and Mike and I, but like also Machi and Johnny the composer, Emilian, who's also a sprite artist. A a bunch a bunch of people have contributed and done amazing work that deserves to see the light of day. So that's like, so to me, success is getting that stuff out there so that work can finally be seen by more people.
I don't want this to sound wrong, but given that you've worked on it for so long, did your definition of success changed over that?
Yes, it has. I think I touched on that a little bit, but it absolutely has changed. I think that in the early days, the success to me was just almost purely financial. Whereas honestly, these days, I mean, success to me is really honestly multi-factor. I mean, it's not just there's the game being enjoyable, like I said, but there's also like, are we building up like a team to like, that can sort of support things for the future? Are we sort of even just the learning perspective, like are we better prepared for the next game? Like that's a huge success, and I think that we will be as well. So like my definition of success has changed in those regards. Now, as a company, the definition of success, like when I think about put my business hat on, the success, it's pretty, I mean, the idea of success from a financial perspective is kind of the same as it always has been, but like from the perspective of an actual person working on a game, or as a person who is designing a game, like those have changed over time.
This is a big one. Why do you make games?
I feel like I don't have a real deep answer. I just like doing it. It's been my longtime hobby. I like making things, and I especially like making things in video game form. And I'm very lucky that I get to do it. and get to do it with a lot of very fantastic and creative people.
Was there something that inspired you originally to get into game development?
I mean, games themselves really, like games with I was captured very early on by games that have level editors in them. There were like we had an old Macintosh with OG Load Runner that had a level editor in it, and that was pretty much my childhood, was making levels in Load Runner, and then any other game after that that happened to have some built-in level editor or something I could get into, whether it was like StarCraft, or I don't know if y'all remember Descent, the kind of, people kind of call it a Doom like, where you're a spaceship and can turn in every direction. Yeah, no, it had like a really sick like the level editor set of tools with it, and I spent a lot of time making those too. And that's I've my whole life I've been bouncing around between level editor to level editor, making stuff and having a good time, and that's, I guess in some ways it's that was how I got started on this project. Was someone asked me if I wanted to make levels, and I was like, okay.
Yeah. Ian's story there actually made me recall, like, actually, my story, my origins is when I was 5 years old. There was like a news broadcast article about some other kid, like an 8-year-old, and then they talked about, oh, like they designed a video game, and I guess they released the game. I'm not really sure, like, but I watched this news article about making a video game, and like in that moment, my like 5-year-old, I was 5, 6, something like that. In that moment, my brain's like, whoa, like I could do that. Like I could make a video game. And then I like spent like the next few days like just like a piece of paper like drawing out, okay, here's the game, here's the bad guy, and here's the I just remember like a princess and like maybe like a green monster or something, right? I just like on paper like, okay, here's the video game, right? Here's gonna be the game. And so it's kind of interesting for me. Like what's weird is that like, I've always known like my entire life like what I really wanted to do, because like there's like, oh, this is so cool, I'm gonna do that. But but that idea of like the piece of paper has kind of stuck with me for a very long time. I would spend just free time in class, just like taking either existing games, maybe like, okay, here's some new stuff, or like here's like a sequel. Like when I was in like fourth or fifth grade, I'm like, here's a sequel to Donkey Kong Country, right? Like okay, here go, now there's these power ups. There's like a power slap equipment, right? Because you had like the Smash Bros. Like these are vague memories, right? But like like to some extent, like as I always start thinking about like how do you, like, ooh, what could, this game be, or a new game. So I always sort of had these notebooks. Actually have a big stack. One of them is a huge notebook of like coming up with like my own like Age of Empires type game. And it was if you remember, like there was a subtitle to Warcraft, like Orcs and Humans. It's like I had something like Pigcraft, like pigs and wolves. So it's basically like the three little pigs, right? And like what if like were the pigs, and the two teams had pigs and wolves, right? And they had their different things. So yeah, I sort of came up with a whole structure of like you start with sticks and you move up to bricks, right? So yeah.
Good early asymmetrical RTS game design there.
Yeah.
Pigs and wolves. I'm pretty sure you guys asked me last time, and I was thinking about this because I think my answer last time was probably something like, because I have to. And but then you have children, right? And then it's like, okay, well, I have to take care of them. Is that also why I'm making games? And so it's funny, even in the last 4 months, I think my answer to that has changed. And like with all things very generically, everything feels more profound when you're responsible for human life. And I think now my answer feels more like wanting to do something that my children can someday be proud of me for doing, versus the day job I have now, which I won't go into, but it's a job, I'd much rather my kids growing up knowing that I have this other thing in life, and stoking them to creativity and all that. So now it's like about becoming a role model or something. I don't know. Kids is weird, man. It changes you. You guys have kids. I know Ryan does. So he gets it, but it's like, what's happened to me?
I do enjoy that you're thinking legacy now.
Yeah, and I think and now we style ourselves OI Games, from Omega Entertainment, but that family has grown since we last talked on this podcast, and now a lot of it is creating a home for those people, even Nate and Ian like creating a space, a cooperative space. And I think just in the news, I can't remember what they called it, but there's like 5 studios came together to make like a co-op and to share just like ideas and disciplines and things. And I think that's such a great idea. And I think just creating a safe space for people that you can be proud of. And if 5 years from now I wasn't even making games, but like this thing had been built and people were working here and were happy and meaningful and gainfully employed and treated right and all that, I'd be happy. I'd be satisfied with that.
You take a minor detour here. So OI Games has continued to work on Clockwork Ambrosia, but at the same time, you've been putting out updates for Tower Song. What's prompted or motivated you to continue to work on that one?
I think I just felt like Tower. I hadn't said all I wanted to say with Tower Song, and that will probably always be true. Now that I started talking about it from a game design perspective, it's just like going to live there, I guess, forever. And I think this is what happens when you make video games. Especially at that scale, like no one ever ships a finished game. I didn't. Nate and Ian are not going to. And I think they just they live with you and they haunt you, I think, forever. And I think also some of it is as Clockwork Ambrosia is coming out, and I think that that's really a huge level up for our portfolio. There are things that I've wanted to go back and just kind of like improve upon that have bugged me. Next month, we're going to put out another little tiny patch where I'm just kind of replacing some of the pre-made art with more original art, and just trying to take that kind of hobby game and make it something I'm proud of. And interestingly, I think another basic reason too, it sold as many units in its second year as it did in its first, so people were still playing it. So I wanted to keep working on it for them, but they'd find bugs. I wanted to fix them. I don't know. I've joked with Ian and Nate recently. Used to be, if you guys remember when game patching was first a thing, there was a revolt in the community of like, oh wow, now developers don't even finish their games; they just ship broken, unfinished games. But now, if you put a game out and you don't patch it, your community will turn on you like, wow, they don't support their own game. Like they're just going to put a game out there and walk away from it. Like it's horrible, and it's really a different thing. So every game is sort of a live service game now.
So OI fans can put the pitchforks down.
Yeah. As long as people are asking for stuff, I think if a year from now a Tower Song player is like, "Hey, I found this bug and I'll fix it," unless it's crazy. They're having a couple bugs that have come up there. I'm like, there's no way I can't spend, the time to fix that. We'll just have to live with it. But we have the ability to patch our game, so I think we will.
Do you want to say anything about Devil Lift?
So while I've been working with Nate and Ian on this, the rest of the OI Games family has been working on our next kind of in-house game called Devil Lift, which is I call it kind of like a buddy cop, deck builder. Except they're not cops, but you're playing as two. You pick two characters, each of which has their own deck, and you go through missions and playing both those characters at the same time. We made an appearance at Geek Girl Con at the end of 2025, just to get some early exposure to see how the core concepts of the game were working out. Got a lot of ideas from that, and then did a more public announcement in February. Put out a playtest builds, which I believe you guys got a hold of, and things are still going on that. I will say that it's interesting. I think the feedback from that has been pretty foundational, and even as I speak, the game director on that is kind of making some foundational changes to that game design to which I think will both help make it stand out, as well as I think solve some of its more core issues. So yeah, I mean, it's still kind of a game in like early pre-alpha, but I think something we learned with Ambrosia that I'm now applying forward is, it's never too early to play the game, never too early to get feedback, never too early to get people to test it, because you just don't know what assumptions you're making incorrectly. There's no real, like, I don't have any, we have this coming out, like we're looking at, I'll say, like another kind of like more public release later this year, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, hoping to have that out in the next couple of years here.
Devil Lift is looking very cool. One of the perks of working close with OI is that I get to see a lot of Devil Lift. Watch out for that. Watch out for that one.
Yeah, we have a really fun. Our creative director at OI came up with this idea called the Open Office concept, which is just a Discord channel that people hang out in. And we invited RealmSoft to do it. And so any given day, there's usually 2 or 3 people hanging out in that room, just like vibing, chatting about whatever while they draw or create levels or whatever they're working on, or come in and chat about stuff. And it's been a nice way to create community with a bunch of people who are geographically not local.
It's been fantastic for me. I've felt a lot less like I'm just working in a hole this last year.
Yeah, I mean it's been tough with me having to have a full-time job for most of the development up until last couple of months. So my time was split between a lot of things. So yeah, Ian was kind of our sole real developer for a long time there.
Can you tell us a hobby that you have that is not working on video games or playing video games or talking about video games on a podcast?
I have a random ongoing project that I've just so many years ago I had an idea for like like in Magic the Gathering or like other games, there's like a life counter, like this idea for like what if you had like an iPod and then you kind of had the old iPods had like this little like dial, like what if you had like a live counter, you could actually like physically like and then like you had like a display, an hour display. And like I've been working on parts of that idea for like years, like hobbies. I have a mechanical version I'm still trying to get working, but like I have an electrical one, which is electrical one isn't as interesting because you have your phone and stuff. But like there's a proof of concept because it turns out that just a couple of years ago, one of the hobbyist sites for electrical stuff, they released like a mechanical dial, a digital mechanical dial, so like I can literally turn that into an electrical version. But so like I kind of do like 3D printing stuff and things of that on the side. But outside of that, like I just like to do just like new activities. Is kind of just my hobby. Like what's going on around town, and like is there sort of something cool. And you like recently went to do like there's like a foodie con or foodie fest, something just like you literally just go, it's like food vendors, like just all over in this in this sort of arena space, and you just like try all kinds of different food from all over the world.
Feels like it's probably a cop out to say tabletop gaming. I also spend my time building Gundam models. Just really in there doing definitely not just only nerd shit.
Michael, how many hobbies have you lost since the birth of the twins?
100% of them. I was like, I don't, there is no answer to this question for me. My girls are like 14 weeks old right now. So number one, keeping my wife as sane and human as I can, and then number two, making sure that the girls are alive. That's really where my if it's not games, and it's mostly not anymore, that's where my time goes.
So this is a question we like to ask all of our guests, but what support mechanisms do you have in place?
I'll say 100%. My wife also, I even before the twins, but also definitely after, just being, I feel very fortunate. I can talk to her, as long as I do it, respectfully. I can talk to her about anything. I can bring up any problem that I'm having in my life, in work, or with like if we're having an issue, like we can just always talk about it and sort it out. And it's so much easier to do all these things when, I just have that person. So if you have that person in your life, you're lucky. They're hard to find, but I found her and I did not let go of her. So
And pretty much all of my family is fortunate enough to be supportive, and kind of be sort of surprising because like historically when I was young, my mother is very pragmatic person, right? So like if something doesn't make sense, whether it's from personal perspective or financial perspective, she usually speak up with like, I don't know, are you sure about that? I don't know. But she's always been from like day one, like I said, when I was this little kid, like 5 years old, she's always been very supportive of my desire to have a career in video games. And that's, very surprising. If you knew her, that'd be kind of surprising because I'm one of those people like I didn't have a credit card in college because my mom was like, I don't know if you can have that, like money's gonna run away. So like that's kind of the kind of person that she is, but she's always been, just very supportive of me for game development, and really everybody in my family has been that way. Everybody that surrounds me has been supportive. So I'm fortunate in that respect because like I can feel very down, very dour about this idea of like a game, it's just a year from release for like 10 years, right? It hasn't actually happened, and like everybody still being very positive about that fact to be like, yeah, it takes a long time. It's good.
Yeah, I'm a very very fortunate person myself that the game development is kind of the most dramatic thing going on in my life. I have a very very wonderful partner who is just the most supportive person there can be. Nothing we can't work through together. And my family is very supportive. I have a lot of wonderful friends. And in that regard, I feel very fortunate.
Tell us a game that everyone should play, and I'm gonna pick Clockwork Ambrosia, so the rest of you don't have to say that.
I'll just sort of start with the game that my mom would probably say is a bit of an inspiration. And at least I want you to say it's the game that taught me how to read when I was little. It's Faxanadu or maybe Fazanadu, depending upon your persuasion. So this old NES game, but it was the first game that I could probably consider like my game because my brother rented it. From sorry, I just said walk, but my brother rented it from for just a couple of days, but I really enjoyed it. And so apparently my parents knew because I got it for Christmas that year. So that was like the first game that was like my game that I owned.
I'm gonna say Outer Wilds. Um, Speaking of like puzzle box games, that game mentally like just put me through it, emotionally devastated me. I cried like a child at the end. I think about that game all the time, and Nate once told me that it takes there was some research out there. I think it was like 3 years of not thinking or doing something before you can like forget it and like you can like come back and like it can be new again. And I think I'm at the point where it's now been 3 years and I can go play the game again and not remember like all the solutions. Although of course I remember certain things, but just a fantastic game. Especially for science fiction nerds out there. It's one of those few games that manages to like pull off, I feel like, hard sci-fi with game mechanics and game design, and I think it's a lovely game.
I'll just go with the first thing that popped into my head earlier for whatever reason, which was Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13, which is not necessarily a game I would recommend everyone play, but I think everyone should have the experience of playing that type of game where you just get in there and have an emergent experience that takes you for a ride.
The other game that I'd say, because there's a few games that I would really call like perfect. I think that's really an impossible bar to hit. But if you talk about a game that's perfect within its genre, what it's trying to do, and I do think that within that sphere, there are two games that I like to say are pretty much as close to perfect as you can get. The XCOM 2, which is probably, in my opinion, it basically took the ideas from XCOM 1 and the gaps and really filled all those in. And then one that I would say when I was younger was actually Final Fantasy VII. A lot of people talk about this game from a story perspective, but I think like mechanically, it is, it is very tight, especially for that era. Just the way that sort of things work and in sort of deeper sort of underlying mechanics outside of just the material. The material system is good, but outside of that, so like it was the first game that I internally sort of wrote a short essay about its design. So yeah.
Some media to check out, a book or a TV show or some music.
We like to put the softball questions at the end, and they're really stumpers.
Y'all should watch the K-drama called Unlock My Boss. It's basically about a company president who gets trapped in a smartphone, and hijinks ensue from there. I almost don't want to say more than that but it just kind of goes places.
I'm already sold. I don't think you need to say more.
I'm going to recommend Precious Little Sleep for anyone who's trying to get their young children to go to bed so you can go to bed. Because that's the kind of book I read right now. But it's pretty good.
You recommend sleep.
So how many, guys, I'd like to ask you guys questions. I like to counter interview. So what number episode is this that we'll be recording right now? If you released them all in order, do you guys know?
16.
16?
I guess 16 asterisks. We did like a promo bit for Ben's podcast. Where we pretended that was going to be one of these. So for like the first 2 minutes, it was one of these. I don't know if that counts or not.
Oh. So, why have you made 16 of these, and why are you probably going to make a 17th, personally?
The 17th one's easy. There's still more things I want to find out from more different people. Nolan, do you have an answer for that?
Well,
yeah, I don't know.
What have you found out that, like, what's behind that answer? Like, what have you found out that it's just like, oh my gosh, like, and was number one that same reason, or did that reason change over time for you?
It's still the same. So the first one was Ben, and it was like, I've never talked to somebody that's done a podcast before, as I do a podcast. So let's take this, and then you talk to different people that stream or game developers or Phil from the, Video Game History Foundation. And it's just this super interesting mix of people doing cool stuff. And I always want to know more.
It's
Nolan?
pretty similar for me. Yeah, I just enjoy meeting people. And in this format, I found that people are remarkably candid and willing to answer some very deep questions. So it's just a good way to get to meet people kind of in a weird way. And we've also found out that from the people who listen that they also really enjoy kind of, putting some tangible information behind these people who are like, small creators and doing things that, they don't really have a window into. So part of it is my own personal, I really like to talk to people. And part of it is, I think that as content creators ourselves, right, there is sort of space for this to just have sort of casual chats with people talking about why they do what they do.
I think something else that I've found interesting is you find new things I have found new things that I've become interested in to champion to other people.
What's a good example of that?
Like telling people to check out Tower Song would probably be the first one that comes to mind because it was in the lineage. That's like the first time that happened. And I would have said that if you're not here anyway, Michael.
Oh, shucks. Yeah, that's cool. I think you guys have I really enjoyed it last time. I've enjoyed it this time. I can tell Nate and Ian have also enjoyed it by their, over the last several, months, like any 2-hour meeting block we've had, they've smiled more, I think, in the last 2 hours here than we have in most of our developer interviews. So that's a good sign to me.
during the development cycle. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if Tim and Brett don't turn the RSS feed over to you guys, you just start your own podcast someday. Because I think it's very interesting hearing how and why people do the things that they do, and that the sport structure questions. So yeah, it's good stuff.
I've secretly wanted to like have a YouTube channel where I just talk about random stuff, like my random ideas, like random like because it's also or thoughts like my random like Nathan's thoughts on like this movie or this thing, and because like I do just have this random things like I just have I have like opinions or like I have uh, uh, I think a suggestion or like here's what I think might be is right or wrong with something. And but it's always random. Like it's not like a consistent thing. Like some of it is like, oh, this all like tabletop games. Some of it is like, oh, this movie. Someone is like, oh, this scientific theory. I think that there's something wrong with it. It's like it's so kind of random. It's like how could you like kind of like maybe just have like a YouTube channel or just like randomly talked about stuff. I like here's what I think about this.
Nate's Variety Hour.
Yeah.
It sounds like Nate could hook you guys up with interesting people to talk to. Or try to expand your interview pool. Because he's a guy who's always like yeah, I saw this like video about this like completely like off topic thing, unrelated, but like super first whatever he found was interesting, and then he has an interesting response to it. So it's very curious minds. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other part of this is I just like to talk and Ryan does all the work, so it's
Yeah, it's
pretty
true.
easy. It's a good relationship.
Biggest lesson in game development and probably business development that I learned, like my secret sauce, is always be willing to like find somebody who's willing to do the work that you don't want to do. And you do that often enough, and eventually you're left with just the stuff you want to do.
Thanks, Mike.
I will counter that because it's what I do is find someone smarter than yourself and work with them.
Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. They want to do the thing. They're also smarter smarter than you are about it too. I generally find people who are more interested in doing something I don't want to do are also better at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is the same for me. So that is right back at you.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say is that, Ian and myself are pretty good counterparts because like we're both designers, but like what we design are like different things that then, come together to basically
Virtually no overlap.
Yeah, exactly. Like what he likes to do design is like, I don't like to do that. Like what I like to do design is like Ian's like, I don't know, that's too much for me. So yeah.
There really is no overlap with those two. It's very interesting how they came together. And probably for the best that I'm over here just doing the producer stuff, because I think I find myself interested in things that they're both interested in, and then you're just stuck.
All right, well, there is a dog on camera right now, so
yeah, this is Zelda.
That is what I'm paying attention to. But I think that's a wonderful place to wrap it up. So go ahead and let us know where we can find your stuff.
You can find everything we do at oi.games, including Clockwork Ambrosia, and you'll find Clockwork Ambrosia on Steam. Buy it now.
OI also has a Discord you guys should think about joining.
Yeah, you can find links to the Discord at oi.games and also on the Steam pages for those games. Yeah, it's a good time. You can come play our games, even when they're not out.
Realmsoft has a slightly less presence, but we do have probably Steam developer page. I don't know if we have a public Discord, but we have I don't know, we have a Twitter that we used to use at Realmsoft Devs, but just you can Google search or whatnot, but we want to follow the development company. Yeah.
Nate, just Google it.
Just Google it, yeah.
All right, Nolan, where can we find you?
You can find my games at upatnight.games, and if you want to see more of me as a streamer, you can go to twitch.tv/CalamityNolan. Thanks for listening to this episode of Discord Game Club, Just Rhetoric. We want to thank Brett and Tim for making the Dev Game Club podcast and for giving us a slot in their release feed. We also want to thank Mark and Artemage for starting the Discord Game Club podcast. Go listen to those episodes if you haven't already. If you'd like to hear more interviews like these, let us know. You can find us in the Dev Game Club Discord, where Calamity Nolan and Biostats. Goodbye!